So a pipe bursts under your sink. You panic. You call a plumber. He shows up. He's in your house for maybe 45 minutes. He tightens some stuff, swaps a valve, and then he hands you a bill for $420. And you stand there thinking the same thing every single homeowner thinks. This guy is getting rich. 45 minutes, $400. He must be printing money. Here's the thing. He's almost certainly not. In fact, the person who owns that plumbing company is probably keeping about 5 to 8 cents of every dollar that walks through the door. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where that $420 actually goes, why the plumbing business is one of the most quietly brutal industries to run, and why, despite all of that, some of the biggest and smartest money on Wall Street is right now pouring billions of dollars into toilets and drains. Stick around because that last part genuinely does not make sense until you understand the first part. Let's start with the bill, because the bill is where all the confusion lives. When a plumber charges you, that number feels insane compared to what you assume he's paid, and the wage side is real. The typical plumber in America earns somewhere around $27 to $36 an hour. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median full-time plumber, pipe fitter, or steam fitter makes about $63,000 a year, with the top 10% clearing $105,000. An apprentice might make $20 an hour, a journeyman around $34, a master plumber more. So if the guy in your kitchen is getting, say, $35 an hour, and the company is billing you $90, $120, sometimes $200 an hour, that's a 2.5 to 3 times markup. So the company's swimming in it, right? And this is the first place your prediction breaks, because that plumber does not get paid for most of his day. Watch what actually happens. He drives to your house. Not billable. He diagnoses the problem and writes you a quote. Often not billable. He drives to the supply house to get the right part. Not billable. He drives back. Not billable. He does paperwork. He takes callbacks. He quotes 3 other jobs this week that said no. None of it billable. Industry data from field service software companies puts a plumber's billable time at somewhere between 30 and 55% of the workday. One widely cited benchmark says only about 55% of a 40-hour week actually shows up on an invoice. That's 22 billable hours out of 40. Some shops are worse, running as low as 30%, which means 70% of the time they're paying a plumber, that plumber is generating exactly $0. Now the math gets scary. Let's say that plumber costs the company about $44 an hour once you add payroll taxes, workers' comp, and benefits on top of his wage. If he only bills 22 of his 40 hours, his real cost per billable hour isn't $44. It's closer to 80. So if the company is billing him out at $85 an hour, they are making something like $5 a billable hour off his labor. $5. And out of that $5, they still have to pay for everything else. Which raises the obvious question. What is everything else, and how does it eat a business alive? This is where we have to talk about the 2 numbers that secretly run every plumbing company, because almost every homeowner, and honestly a lot of plumbers, confuse them. The first is gross margin. That's what's left after the direct cost of the job, the labor, and the parts. A healthy plumbing company runs a gross margin around 62%. So on your $420 bill, after paying the tech and the materials, maybe $250 is left. Sounds great. But then comes the second number, net margin. And net margin is what's left after literally everything else. And everything else is a monster. Think about what that company is paying for that never touches your job. The trucks and a wrapped service van runs $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, times however many are in the fleet. The fuel, the insurance, general liability, commercial auto, workers' comp, which can add 15 to 25% on top of operating costs, all by itself. The licensing fees for every plumber on staff, the office rent, the dispatcher answering the phone, the software, the marketing, and getting a single plumbing lead through Google can cost $20 to $60, and that's per lead, not per customer. The owner's salary, and the parts sitting in the back of every truck that get used and never logged to a job, which quietly bleeds tens of thousands of dollars a year in most shops. Add all of that up, and here's the punchline the whole industry lives with. The average plumbing company in America nets somewhere between 5 and 10%. And a lot of the honest data says the true average is closer to 5 to 8. So a plumbing company doing $1.5 million a year in revenue, which sounds like a thriving business, is often taking home $60, maybe $90,000. The owner of a $1.5 million company can be making less than a school teacher while working 60-hour weeks and carrying all the risk. And now you might be thinking, okay, so it's a volume game. They just need to do more revenue. And that is the exact trap that destroys plumbing companies. And it's beautiful once you see it. Because revenue is a vanity number. Here's a real comparison from the people who review these books for a living. Take two plumbing companies, both doing $1.5 million in revenue, both running the same 60% gross margin. Company A has overhead eating 46% of revenue and ends the year at a 4% net margin. That's $60,000. Company B, same revenue, same gross margin, but overhead is only 35%, and it ends the year at 15% net. That's $225,000. Same trucks, same techs, same jobs. Nearly a 4 times difference in what the owner actually keeps. And the only thing that changed was overhead discipline. Scale that to a $2 million company, and the gap between an 8% operator and a 16% operator is $200,000 a year. Over 5 years, that's $1 million. Same business, different systems. So where does the good money actually hide? Because it does hide somewhere. And this is the part that flips how you see the entire trade. Not all plumbing work is created equal. New construction, running pipe in a subdivision that's being built, feels like the big, impressive contract. Huge revenue numbers. But new construction runs gross margins of maybe 20 to 30%. Because you're competing on price against every other bidder, and the general contractor squeezes you. Service and repair, the burst pipe, the water heater, the clogged main, that runs 50 to 60% gross margin or better, because when your basement is flooding at 9 on a Friday night, you are not comparison shopping. And the absolute crown jewel, the thing that separates the rich plumbing companies from the exhausted ones, is recurring maintenance agreements. Membership plans. Those run 70 to 80% gross margins because it's predictable, scheduled, low material work, and it turns customers into a subscription. The companies that build maintenance memberships up to 30% of their revenue consistently out-earn the emergency-only shops by 4 to 6 full points of net margin. That is the single highest leverage move in the entire industry, and most owners never make it. So let's total up the reality so far. It's a business with thin margins, brutal non-billable time, expensive overhead, and a constant temptation to chase impressive-looking revenue that actually loses money. Starting one isn't even cheap. It runs anywhere from $10,000 on the absolute lean end to $50,000 or $65,000 once you've got a van, tools, insurance, licensing, and a few months of cash reserve. And the number one reason new plumbing companies fail isn't lack of work, it's underpricing. Charging too little to cover all those invisible costs we just walked through. So given all of that, given how hard this business is to actually make money in, here's the question that should be bugging you. Why is Wall Street losing its mind over it? Because they are. In February of 2026, Blackstone, one of the largest investment firms on the planet, agreed to pay roughly $2.5 billion for a home services company called Champions Group, valuing it at about 18.5 times its earnings. A few months earlier, Goldman Sachs bought a big stake in another one, Sila Services, at a valuation around $1.7 billion. There's a company called Apex Service Partners, backed by a private equity firm, that has rolled up around 300 separate plumbing, heating, and electrical businesses into a single machine doing about $1.3 billion a year, with over 8,000 tradespeople. Private equity add-on activity in this space jumped 88% year over year through the middle of 2025. So the smartest, most ruthless money in finance looked at the toilet and drain business, this thin margin, unglamorous trade, and said, we want all of it. Why? Here's the trick, and it's genuinely clever. It's called multiple arbitrage, and it works like this. A single small plumbing company doing maybe 2 million in revenue. If the owner sells for a fairly low price relative to its earnings, maybe 3, 4, 5 times its profit. It's small, it's risky, it depends on one owner. But if you buy 50 of those little companies and bundle them into one giant regional platform with shared marketing, shared back office, centralized purchasing power, and professional management, that giant platform sells for 15, 18, 20 times earnings. So the play is, buy the pieces cheap, staple them together, and the exact same earnings are suddenly worth 3 or 4 times more simply because they're packaged bigger. You're not even necessarily improving the plumbing. You're repricing it. And plumbing specifically is the dream target for reasons that are almost poetic. 1, it's essential and non-deferrable. Around 70 to 80% of service calls are urgent, the kind of problem you cannot ignore and cannot postpone. 2, it's recession resistant. When the economy tanks, people cancel vacations and delay renovations. But they do not let raw sewage back up into the house. During past recessions, discretionary trades like moving collapsed 13%, while plumbing barely flinched. 3, that maintenance membership model we talked about creates recurring subscription-like revenue, which investors will pay a premium for above almost anything. And 4, the supply of companies to buy is enormous and getting desperate, because the average plumbing business owner in America is now 58 years old or older, often with no plan for who takes over when they retire. Over half the skilled trades workforce is nearing retirement, and there's a projected shortage of around 550,000 plumbers. So you've got thousands of aging owners with no exit, and a line of billion-dollar firms showing up with a check. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy with 5 to 8 years of runway. And here's the part that should genuinely make you look twice the next time a van pulls into your driveway. When these firms buy your friendly local family plumber, they very often keep the exact same name, the same logo, the same "it's been in our family for 40 years" branding. The truck says the same thing it always did. You have no idea. You just called a company owned by a private equity fund in New York. Sometimes that's great for the workers. One firm reports its technicians get about a 20% pay bump in the first year after acquisition. And one Arizona company grew from 30 million in revenue to 70 million after selling, with the original owner keeping a piece. And sometimes critics worry it changes the incentives in your home when the person recommending a $2,000 repair is being measured on this quarter's numbers by investors you'll never meet. So let's bring this all the way back around, back to you, standing in your kitchen with that $420 bill, feeling robbed. Now you know. That money didn't make anyone rich in 45 minutes. It paid for the 20 minutes of driving you didn't see, the trip to the supply house, the van, the insurance, the licensing, the phone that got answered, the 3 quotes that went nowhere this week, and if the company is well run, a slim slice of actual profit on top. The dirty secret of the plumbing business is that the money was never really in the plumbing. The best plumber in town and the richest plumbing owner in town are almost never the same person. Being incredible with a pipe wrench earns you a good wage. Understanding billable hours, overhead, pricing discipline, and recurring revenue, that's what earns you the business. One person owns a truck. The other person owns a system. And now that system is so valuable that the biggest investors in the world are buying everyone they can find, one flooded basement at a time. So the next time somebody tells you plumbers are a ripoff, you can tell them the truth. The plumber isn't the one getting rich. And the people who figured that out, they're not holding a wrench at all. If you found this video valuable, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below which business you want me to cover next.